Welcome to The Curious Keeper. I am your host, Shannon Cutts, along with my ever-present, irrepressible, feathered sidekick and co-host, Pearl Cutts. And I'm also mama to an adorable 6.5-year-old red-footed tortoise named Malty. And so this show is actually about Malty. It's called The Curious Keeper. Why do redfoot tortoises do that? Which is a question I have asked myself nearly every single day since Malty came home to stay at 5 weeks old. She was the size of a silver dollar, and I'm really not sure who was more terrified, me or her. But we have both been on a steady learning curve ever since, and she really keeps me on my toes. And since, it can be kind of hard for redfoot tortoise people to find one another, we're not as easy. There's no Redfoot Tortoise Park we can all go to and exchange notes. Let's just put it that way. And so I had the idea to maybe just do a few episodes where we could talk about some of the mysterious behavior of these wonderful animals, and maybe some of the evolutionary and biological reasons behind these behaviors that we see in captivity that just don't seem to make that much sense. And so I invited my dear friend Danielle Inman to join us. Thank you so much for being here. Danny, as we like to call her, is a wonderful herpetologist and an exotic animal expert. She has both the deep education, clinical, and intellectual knowledge of the wild redfoot tortoise, and also the practical hands-on experience caring for redfoots in captivity. And so I thought she could help me and all of you to better understand what the heck is going on inside the mind of a redfoot tortoise. And so today we are actually going to talk about why redfoot tortoises sometimes just sit in the middle of a sunbeam. Why do they just come out and they just, in a different episode, we talked about why they like to burrow and scratch around in the dirt and hide. And so, maybe that would make sense in isolation, but then they'll do exactly the opposite, and they'll come out and they'll sit right out in the open. And so why the heck do redfoot tortoises do that?
Okay, so the behavior that you're observing is generally known as basking. And usually when you see this, they're in a sunbeam. And the reason for that is twofold. And it's an adaptation that allows for them to warm themselves because redfoot tortoises and all tortoises are ectotherms and can't really manufacture or generate their own body heat. And so they're reliant upon their environment. And the sun is an excellent way for them to recharge their batteries, so to speak. And so you do often see them resting in the sun in order to absorb some of that heat. Now, the other thing that's possibly even more important in the heat aspect of things is the absorption of UVB radiation. And that's something that the sun does an excellent job of providing. Or if you have your redfoot indoors, you should have a good UVB bulb, either a fluorescent style bulb, a mercury vapor style bulb, something that provides a great deal of UVB radiation. Specifically, in order for redfoots to begin the metabolic synthesis of calcium and vitamin D3. And it's critical for them to have UVB radiation in order to complete this cycle and actually be able to utilize the vitamins and minerals that allow them to keep their bones strong, keep their immune health where it should be, keep their muscles functioning and strong, and generally to keep themselves in good physical condition. UVB radiation and basking in order to get that UVB radiation are absolutely critical.
One thing I found that's really interesting as I've looked at and learned more about different tortoise species over the last 6 years is how differently colored their shells can be, and redfoot tortoises seem to have a very dark coloration. I mean, they look like they stand out until I see my Malty in a stack of leaves or something, and then it's like she's right in front of me and I can't even see her. But I've wondered if, like, let's say if I'm here in Houston, which of course I am, and I'm driving around in a dark colored car like I drive around in, it seems like my car holds more heat than if I was driving around in a light colored car.
Yeah.
Is that the case with the Redfoot? Is that one of the reasons why I'm just curious why their shells are so dark?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a keen observation. And yes, it is an adaptation to the environment that they inhabit. And you'll see that, like you said, with other tortoise species, if you take another common pet tortoise, like the sulcata, for instance, that's a tortoise that has that nice light sandy colored shell. And that serves a couple of purposes. One, to better blend in with that, grassland sort of sub-Saharan to even Saharan environment, where it's sandy and scrubby and, low, dry, brittle grasses and haze, things like that. That blends in very well, but it also helps to reflect some of the heat. And they're really, really, when it's, when the heat is blazing in the middle of the afternoon in North Africa. And so the opposite of that is true for the Redfoot tortoise. This is a species that inhabits a more equatorial region, and a region that doesn't get quite as hot, and kind of tends to stay in that more moderate range. That darker shell really helps them to soak up some of that sun, especially because they tend to be in kind of marginal areas between maybe forest and field or forest and stream, to the deeper forest, primary and secondary rainforest areas where sunlight is spotty, and that dark shell helps them to absorb some of that, but it also blends in with the general biomass and detritus that's on the forest floor, or in the grassland areas where they would naturally call home.
That makes so much sense, because I'm just thinking about in a different episode we talked about why they like to burrow around, and how tasty they are as hatchlings, and how everything wants to eat them. And so I would imagine it would be very challenging for a hatchling to be able to bask for any period of time before somebody came along looking for lunch.
Yeah, and they're multicolored carapace. How they have those nice little those nice little spots of lighter colored areas, helps to break up the silhouette of the tortoise in general, just like a tiger's stripes do. And so it makes it a bit more difficult for, a would-be predator to identify a single tasty morsel of an organism. And what they see instead is just some leaf debris, leaf litter on the forest floor, which is why, again, they do engage in that sort of fossorial, just kind of creeping under the leaf habit.
Makes so much sense. And I think if I was a red-footed tortoise, I would do exactly the same thing, at least to get through the lunch rush, right?
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for being here and helping us to kind of get a glimpse inside the mind's eye of red-footed tortoises. And we've so enjoyed having you as well, watching this.
Thanks for having me.
Episode. Yes, and look forward to another one very soon. Okay, bye for now.
Cheers.